right, welcome everyone. So for our next speaker, we have Courtney Yatteau here. She is a developer advocate hailing from ESRI with 2.5 years experience there. Before that, she was actually a high school math teacher, math and computer science teacher. And she hails from Alexandria, Virginia.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Happy Pi Day, by the way. It's definitely one of my favorite holidays.
Thank you. You're the first person to say something.
Yeah? Well, I'm wearing the Pi shirt too, you know? I tried to figure out how to incorporate it in my slides, but I couldn't come up with anything last minute. I mean, there's a lot of mathematics within mapping, but anyway.
Actually, yeah, the guy who wasn't on but said something about it. He even had a apron on just to make like the pie and the bun pun.
Oh my goodness, that's pretty good. Awesome.
There you go.
All right, well maybe get a nice slice of pie later. All right, guys. So we're gonna be looking at some open source web mapping libraries today. So let's jump into it. Let's see here. Yeah. All right. So I've already been introduced, but yes, I am Courtney Yatteau, and here are my socials. I'll have this back up at the end as well. And by the way, just to say it up front, I am pretty tired. I had a red-eye flight from Palm Springs, so I've had like 2 hours of sleep. So I apologize if I am not 100% sharp, but I'm going to do my best. Let's get into it. Okay, so here's the agenda for today. So we're going to start out with intro to mapping. So I'm going to give you some just like vocabulary and the basics of mapping in general on the web. Okay, and then we're going to get into 3 different web mapping libraries. We're going to look at Leaflet, MapLibre GL JS, and OpenLayers. So who has worked with Leaflet before? Anyone? Okay. Oh, nice. Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely, I would say, a good introductory one for sure. MapLibre GL JS? Yeah? Okay. We've got mapping people over here, clearly. All right. And then OpenLayers? Same people? Okay. Yeah, we got a few more. Awesome. Okay. Cool. No, this is great. All right. And then what I'm going to do is show you a couple of integrations that you can use in these open source web mapping libraries. So they're going to be we're going to use ArcGIS REST.js, and then we're also going to use ESRI Leaflet. These are some open source mapping libraries that you can kind of plug into the other ones I just referred to. So, all right. And then we're going to look at a couple of real world examples and some conclusions. All right, so mapping, the role of mapping. What is the point of having a map? Well, there's several different reasons. First, visualization. So maps turn complex data into clear visuals. So it could be something as simple as dots on a map. But if you have several dots on a map, something like clustering can help simplify those large data sets. So for instance, here we've got all of the schools in the United States. And I'm going to be using that data set actually in some of my examples throughout. Yeah. So it really just makes dense data easier to understand and analyze. We've got visualization. Next thing, another really important role of mapping is navigation. So apps like Google Maps guide us from really point A to point B, right? So we've got walking, driving, or even flying. All right, and then communication. So maps and apps like Uber Eats or even Snapchat enable real-time like location tracking, right? So it really keeps people connected and informed. All right, and then we've got prediction is another really important role of mapping. So you can forecast the future, right? So you can predict weather patterns, storm paths, traffic even. Yeah, so they help us really prepare, and if it's traffic, maybe avoid delays. So many different use cases for mapping in general. Okay, all right, so now we're going to look at some key mapping concepts. First one, and this is the foundation of any map, your base map. So this really provides the geographic context. It's your foundational visual layer. So typically these are sourced from tile services. So could be OpenStreetMap or maybe Mapbox. And yeah, it displays things like roads, terrains, and landmarks. And a lot of times you can, well, if it's a vector tile, I'll get into the specifics in a bit, but you can customize the styles a lot of times as well, depending on the type of base map. Okay. And then we have data layers. So data layers, these are what you overlay on top of a base map. So it's giving a bit more information, a bit more spatial, context to whatever the data may be there. So this could represent features like markers or polygons, maybe even heat maps or routes. And yeah, one of the standard formats for this is GeoJSON. So that's a good starting point. Today I'm actually going to be using feature layers. It's ESRI's version of data layers, essentially. And the last one is geocoding. What's geocoding? Mapping people?
Taking a place name or an address and like actually turning it into an XY.
Exactly, right? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, just taking a place and turning it into those coordinates so you can actually visualize it on the map in context of the real world. Perfect. All right. And there are several different APIs that will do this as well. I will be using the ArcGIS one, which is, again, ESRI's one. Yeah, cool. Okay, so let me tell you about a couple different base map types. So we do have, generally we have static or raster tiles. These are in the form of images. A lot of times they're in the form of PNGs. And this is really easy to work with. They're, pre-made still images. They're fast, they're easy to use, and they have a fixed look, so you can't dynamically change them, but they are pretty, like I said, pretty easy to use, less client-side processing as well. So, nice and quick loading. All right, and then we have vector tiles. So these are rendered on the fly, and these contain raw data like coordinates and features, and they are client-side rendered, so it's potentially maybe going to take a little bit more on your processing power, but it allows you to actually dynamically style them on the fly, and they're always visually sharp. So that's a really nice, like, clear, crisp, no matter what the screen resolution is. So it's a nice feature there. So we're gonna deal with both today. Okay, so now we're gonna look at some commonalities that we're gonna see across all of these mapping libraries. Okay, so the first thing is the core technology. So they're all built on JavaScript. That's the language that I am good with, essentially. That's the one I use the most. They are compatible with HTML and CSS, and they work across modern browsers. All right, they're open source, which is great because there's really no licensing fees. They are budget friendly, not necessarily free. I know a lot of people think, open source free, but usually there's a good free starting tier, and then from there, potentially some, you pay as you go type thing, depending on what the API is. They are community driven, so it's really nice. You've got active contributors, collaborative support, rapid updates, that kind of thing. And then they are modifiable. So full source access, since it's all on the web, open to everyone. And nice interoperability among platforms. Right, and they are easy to learn. So they're pretty simple APIs. All have extensive documentation on their website. So yeah, there's plenty of tutorials and sample codes you can find. And then finally, key features of them, they are interactive and they work well on mobile devices, customizable, and they all work in the web Mercator projection, which is just the projection we're all used to seeing. Okay. So now let's get into the first mapping library. This is Leaflet. This is a popular out-of-the-box, lightweight option. It's only about 42 kilobytes of JavaScript. So it's got a minimal footprint for faster loading and low overhead. And it is ideal for like quick deployment and resource constrained environments. And it's got tons of plugins. This is what's really cool about it is the community has built tons of different ways to expand just the very simple Leaflet library itself. So yeah, you can actually see a whole list of them on the website. Yeah, there's so many different ways to just take the basic library and create really cool applications with all these different plugins from there. And I'll show a couple. All right. And then it really does focus on simplicity and performance. So it's an intuitive API designed for really ease of use. Yeah, prioritizes fast, responsive map interactions. Okay. All right, so let's look at a simple map demo. By the way, I don't know if I pointed it out earlier. Let me go back real quick. To slide one. I see a lot of us are on our laptops. I didn't point out the QR code, but that actually is the repo with these slides on it, and it's also got all of the sample like demos that I'm about to do. So if you do want to, follow along right now, feel free. I'll link that up there for 20 seconds. Yeah, but it's gonna all just be. I made it easy. I just put them all in CodePen, so it's just easy to interact with. The only thing here is in order to do some of these demos live with me right now, you will have to get an API key for a couple of them. And that will be an ArcGIS API key, but I put directions on the repo as well. And it's free, but it does take a minute to get there. So, but some of these you don't need that. Great, awesome. Okay, so let's get into it. Here we go. All right, guys, cool. So first of all, let me talk about the basic setup. There's all right. So for simplicity, I am using CDN just to bring in the Leaflet library. That's what I've done here. And of course, the styling. All right. And then I've got some just basic styling for the map. I'm just having it take up 100% of the page, the view height. And then here is really where the magic happens. So I have created a map, and I've used L stands for Leaflet. So I've used the map operation here, and what I've done is I've actually targeted the div ID that I set up here. So those have to match right there. And then the other thing you have to have is your view. So you set the view, and what is that? That is latitude, comma, longitude, which is important to remember because Leaflet, out of these three libraries, is the only one that does it in that order. The other two do longitude, comma, latitude, which I think is the better way, right? Because mathematically that would be x, comma, y. But for some reason, Leaflet likes to do y, comma, x. So it's latitude, comma, longitude. And then finally, this is a zoom level. And so I set it to 12 here. That's typically anything from like 1 to 20 something, 22, 23-ish, depending on the base map style that you're using. All right, and then what I've done is I've used the very simple OpenStreetMap tile layer here. And this tile layer is a static tile layer, so it is in the form of PNGs. And the fun thing is you can actually visualize those tiles if you go to the Network tab. And I'm going to refresh this page. There we go. Awesome. Let me just start, filter out by images. There we go. All right, so we've got, see these PNG images here? These are the tiles for the tile layer. If I open one up, we can visualize one of the specific tiles that have been loaded to fill the extent there. So as you zoom in and out, more tiles will actually come in, as you can see. There you go. So it's only filling in what you need. All right, cool. And another thing about this is, just for fun, I went ahead and put in another style here. So we can use the Open Topo or Open Topography map style. I'm gonna uncomment that out. And there you go. Just a cool another style there. You can honestly, there's so many different styles out there, and you can create your own as well. But with these PNG ones, they're not as easy to style. Like I said, they're static. So vector tiles are going to be more of the ones that you can style, and I will get to those in a little bit. Those don't really work with Leaflet. All right, perfect. Okay, so that is just a simple Leaflet map. Let's go back. Oh yeah, a couple more notes about those styles actually. I'm not a geographer, but just to give you a little bit more context, so the OpenStreetMap style, it's a general purpose one, like I said. It shows roads, landmarks, labels, and other like, standard features for good like everyday navigation. And then the OpenTopo one, it's got contour lines, hill shading, and other terrain features, making it ideal for like outdoor activities. So just giving you a little bit of context, different styles of base maps may be better for different types of applications. Right. Okay, so generally going back through this, just what I showed you there. Remember, you set your div ID, you set your map's center, which is your latitude, longitude, and then a zoom level, 0 to, I think it's more like 22-ish, but usually we don't go that high. So I would suggest nothing really higher than 19. And then a tile layer for your base map. And add it to your map. That is definitely a requirement. So yeah, it's just a few lines of code and you've got a map. Pretty straightforward. All right, so let me talk a little bit about what feature layers are. So these are Esri specific. This is a core GIS element. So data layers in general, like I mentioned earlier, just definitely a core, yes, GIS element. So basically what this has is you've got geometry and attributes. So each feature is defined by its spatial geometry. So points, lines, polygons. And then each of these has attributes to it with essential information. So say the name or classification, that kind of thing. So these add context to the map. And they do allow for interactive mapping. So they do allow you to do things like querying and editing and different types of selection. Yeah, so we're going to use one of those. And in order to do that, I'm going to use a plugin from ESRI Leaflet, which is just an open source library to be used along with Leaflet. Okay, so in this demo, I'm going to actually do several different things. So first of all, I have loaded the OpenStreetMap. So this is exactly the same demo we just saw a minute ago. It's a very simple map. So in order to add a feature layer, I need to use the feature layer plugin from Esri Leaflet. And then I'm going to use a URL and set that to the feature layer that I have. Now these feature layers, these specific ones are hosted in Esri's data platform there. So you can do this yourself if you have like an ArcGIS Online account or ArcGIS Location Platform account. Again, feature layers are Esri specific, but there are other types of data layers. This is just what I chose to show. So you could use potentially another plugin with another type of data layer. All right, let me go ahead and show this. Now, what's going to happen here is we're going to see this is a feature layer of all the schools in the United States. The way that the feature layer plugin from Esri Leaflet works is it's only going to load really what it needs visually right now. So there are, I can't remember how many schools there are in the US. There's a lot, like several thousand, maybe 90-something thousand. I don't know, don't quote me on that. But regardless, so right now it loaded fine. But as I zoom out, it's gonna take a toll on it, as you can see. So it's definitely not ideal to use a feature layer in Esri Leaflet when you have this many points, is kind of what I'm getting at. But if you're zoomed into a little location like I just was, it loads fine. And that's really the power of the feature layer plugin from Esri Leaflet. Right, let me reload it so it's only showing that little portion. All right. Cool. So the next thing I want to show is another cool plugin. At least I think it's pretty cool. We're going to add a search feature to the map, and it's a simple search feature at first, but then it does get cooler. Oh, by the way, yes, I'm showing my API key. Obviously, that's not good practice, but this will expire right after this talk. So take it now if you want to, I guess.
Right now.
Take it right now. Use as much as you can. All right. I'll uncomment all of this out. There we go. Nice. Okay. All right. So when I did that, we saw this little search feature come up, and let me talk through the code a little bit. So it's using the GeoSearch plugin from the geocoding portion of the ESRI Leaflet library. Yeah. So this is really just a simple search feature right now. It's using you do have to have a provider, and that provider is in this case our GF Online provider. And yeah, I don't have anything else set here in terms of parameters, but I will start uncommenting out just to describe more of that there. So, okay, so the basic search feature here, it is by default designed to actually search in the local area, what's within the view. So if I start typing something like VCU, that's obviously going to come up nicely. But if I try to search for maybe like Seattle, see, it's not coming up. So there's a really easy parameter to add there. Use map bounds, false. That's set to true, like I said, by default. And now if I search for Seattle, it comes up. Nice. All right, another thing you can do is, well, position it where you want to. Pretty simple. Put it in the top right. Cool. Okay, there are other parameters that you can set to kind of modify the search in certain ways that you would like. So for instance, maybe you only want to use or only want to get back addresses in the US. So you could set the countries to USA, or you could set categories to address. So maybe you only want addresses to come back and not like POIs, places. Right. And then, I guess I could show this off. So if I try searching for something like Paris, well, Paris, France isn't coming up because I said only search in the US. And then maybe address. Again, actually, I'll just type Paris because Paris is a city and it shouldn't find that. It's going to find specific street addresses. Okay, now here's what I think is pretty cool. I added this feature layer here and I haven't really interacted with it yet. So I can use the feature layer provider plugin from ESRI Leaflet to actually search within the feature layer. So I'm going to uncomment that out, and actually I need to put it within the providers. Let me take out this provider, put it in here. There it is. Okay, so the way this should work is, I can start typing in a school name because this is a feature layer of schools, and I use the parameter search fields to search for school names, comma, total. So when I start typing in school name, we should see the different schools along with their total number of students. Here we go. So I just started typing high for high schools, and it's finding the closest ones within the view there. All right, and then let's see. Yeah, there's a few other parameters I've set here. The format suggestion. So that's really just showing it in such a way that it was like students, or sorry, school name dash students, and then the number. So I just formatted it. Cool. All right, and then, oh yeah, one thing I did already do was add a pop-up, which is pretty straightforward to do. Actually, it's not binded. Yeah, okay, that's not working right now, but no worries. Okay, the last thing I want to do, this guy, I think this is just a warning for the fact that they only want HTML to go in there, like CodePen. It still works though, that's the only warning, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure why the pop-up's not working there. Search control on. results. Oh, you know what? I know what it is. I didn't set pop-ups to come up on each individual marker. I set it to pop up when I click on something. It's supposed to. Oh, because I don't have it uncommented. This will work now. I swear. All right, just search for something. No, still didn't work. All right. Well, we'll move on. This is the power of live coding. All right.
Do you need the add to map
Add to
at
map.
the end of that?
Yeah, well, so we've already added them. So we've got the markers on the map, and then I'm just looking for that pop-up. So we shouldn't have to add the, yeah, this search functionality to the map. So, well, let me know if you figure it out. All right, clustering. Clustering is the next thing that I want to show you here. So you are able to, like I said earlier, visualize a large data set and cluster it. And that way you're able to visualize the points in kind of a easier way there. And there's several different parameters you can set here. So this says show coverage on hover. So if you hover right now, you can see the level of coverage that like those 17 points are being clustered as. You can obviously turn that off. So now if I hover over it, save and refresh. Comma? Maybe it's missing a comma. Yep, that's what the problem was. Okay, so now if I hover, there are no, there's no coverage shown. All right, you can disable clustering at a certain zoom level if you want. You can have a max cluster radius. Default is 80 pixels, so if you change this, that'll actually change how many clusters you have in terms of like the number of pixels, if that makes sense. You can just play around with it and kind of discover what goes on there. So I'll uncomment that out. And as you can see, we've got less clusters now because I brought the cluster size down. If I bring it up, let's see, maybe I can make it like pretty big. Yeah, there we go. So now we've got a giant cluster over here, giant cluster over there. Yeah, so different types of clusters there. All right, and actually, I really need to take this away so that way we can see the clusters better because all those, yeah, there we go, that's much better. Okay, I had the feature layer and then I had it clustered as well, so I had both at the same time. That's why we were seeing all those dots. All right, cool. Yeah, so this is really the power of ESRI Leaflet. There's so many different plugins that you can use. These are just a few of them. Okay. So yeah, just kind of going through what we went through there. We had the two different providers. We had the ArcGIS Online provider. We had the feature layer provider, and they did different things. So the ArcGIS Online provider was just the world kind of search there, and then the feature layer was searching within that specific feature layer, in our case, the schools. All right. Looking at time. All right, I need to speed up. I'm going to speed it up a bit. Okay, so now we've got the next library here. We've got MapLibre GL JS. And this is a fork of Mapbox 1.x. So essentially, Mapbox originally was open source, and then it went closed source. So a group of people decided to make it open source, make an open source version, essentially. So they could still have the power of the Mapbox functionality. It does render with WebGL, which is pretty powerful. It's high performance, hardware accelerated map rendering. It really does enable more smooth visualizations with complex data. So it can handle much more like powerful mapping. And yeah, dynamic data integration. So it supports real-time data updates and interactive map features. And it does easily integrate with various data sources for live mapping applications. And then customizable styling options. Yeah, there's so many different ways you can style your base maps, your vector tile layers or data layers. You can really create whatever kind of visualization that you want. All right, let's look at a simple MapLibre demo. Right, and we do, by the way, GL JS, we do specify that just because it's the JavaScript version of MapLibre. There's a native version as well for mobile. All right, so it's a really similar setup to Leaflet. There's just a bit of a difference in terms of what we have to use from MapLibre versus what we use in Leaflet. So we do use the map option here from MapLibre GL JS. Here we are still targeting that div ID. So just like we did with Leaflet, we are setting the container. In this case, we have a very simple style. It's really simple. If I zoom out, you'll see it's just demo tiles. Pretty basic. And then we've got our center here. Again, Leaflet was latitude, comma longitude. This is longitude, comma latitude. And then we have our zoom level. So honestly, really similar structure to Leaflet. Yep, and then we could play around with the different base map if we want. We could change that. There's one there. Again, that key is going to expire soon. That's a MapTiler key, so use it now. All right, cool. All right, I just explained all of that, but yeah, 0 to about 20 something, pretty similar to Leaflet in that way. Let's go ahead and look at some vector tile layers. So these are actually pre-rendered from feature layers. So as you saw earlier, a feature layer, it was having issues loading so many different features in Leaflet. And it's gonna have the same issue in MapLibre. But what MapLibre can do is, because of the WebGL rendering, it can actually handle loading vector tiles. So these are actually loaded on the client side instead of from the server side. So it's just much faster visualizations. And it allows for you to visualize large data sets in a much more efficient way. All right, so real quick, let's look at that. Okay, so one thing I've done here is I'm actually using a vector tile base map layer for the style here, just for fun. There are so many different styles that you could use from the base map style service from ESRI. Anyway, all right, so let's go ahead and get into looking at feature layers. Okay, so what we saw earlier with Leaflet and ESRI Leaflet was it was actually able to load whatever was in the extent, right? And as we zoomed out, it just was trying to load all these other features. When we use it in MapLibre or even OpenLayers, it's not going to work that way. The way that it's handled is it's only going to load the first 2,000. And then if you want more than that, you'll have to repeatedly call for the next 2,000 features. So when I uncomment this out, let's do that. We'll see that comment more of it out. Let me zoom out. All right, now no, that's good. Okay, let's look at this. Any issues? Nope, I may just need to reload it. Okay. All right, so it's not really wanting to load it right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and just go on to the next part here. I'm not sure why that's not loading because it worked really funny. All right, let's go ahead and try the next one. So this next one is actually just what I was saying. It's basically the same functionality of trying to load a feature layer. It's just gonna load it multiple times, the next 2,000 features over and over again. So let's see that hopefully come up. I wonder if it's just an internet connectivity issue because it looks like it's just loading and loading. No. Well, I swear it works. It's just loading and loading and loading. I don't know. Okay. Anyways, so essentially what you're supposed to see, I'll just describe it. And again, you have access to the code, so you can play with it. You are supposed to be able to see all of the schools then at that point. But because it's a feature layer, it's going to load really, really slowly. I think that's part of the problem too, is it's trying to query 2,000 features over and over and over again out of the several schools that are in the United States. There we go. Yeah. So when I got rid of it, it was fine. So let me go ahead and actually see if this will work now. It's definitely just, it's not good practice to do that. So I think it was having issues handling it. Let me try that. Let's see, all the way down to here. Okay. This should query the feature layer. Okay. All right, well, again, it doesn't want to load. Oh well. Basically what it's supposed to show here is you're supposed to be able to see only the schools in the query, which are these schools that have a student to teacher ratio over 15 and a school level of high school. And then the state abbreviation is Virginia. So we're supposed to only show the Virginia schools there. All right, and then finally, the last thing is the vector tile layer, which basically that's just going to load all of the schools in a much faster way compared to the feature layer. And again, that's because it's client side. All right. Yeah. Yeah. What I was trying to say earlier is the good word for that is pagination. So when you do 2000 and then you over and over and over again and you reset that offset essentially. All right. Finally, wrapping this up here, we've got OpenLayers. So it does support many different map formats. It offers advanced geospatial analysis. So this library is definitely not for beginners. It offers really like complex spatial operations. So if you need something that's really GIS heavy, I would say, and you want to use an open source web mapping library, I would say OpenLayers is the way to go. It does excel with multiple layers, so you can see that in some of these visualizations here. And it does support multi-projections. So you'll see in the code here that we actually have to set it to the proper projection, the web locator. Okay, so the simple code for OpenLayers, again, I'm just using the OpenStreetMap base map. That's this OSM. And so here, as you can see, we had to use a projection option. So projection from longitude, latitude, yeah, and then we're able to work with it just like the other libraries. So it does require that little bit extra there. And it's, again, you just have your div that you're targeting, the ID. You've got your map from OpenLayers. You've got your tile layer here. And yeah, your view. So pretty similar setup, just a little bit extra. All right. I'm not going to worry about showing. That's just another style. Cool. All right. So then, awesome. Yeah, this actually, OpenLayers does allow for a bigger zoom level. And that really is just the way that the map is loaded. I forget exactly how it works, but essentially you can go to a much like finer grain detailing with OpenLayers. All right, last example here. Let's see. Already got it. Commented out. Perfect. Okay. All right. So what I've done is, and this is one of my favorite services from ESRI or ArcGIS. So we have a demographics service. So essentially, you can see different things about like the population. And you can fine tune it to be something like, oh, show me the number of households that have 2 dogs or something like that. So there's all sorts of different variables that you can access in the service. So when I click somewhere, the default is I believe, 500 meter radius. Yeah, I believe it's 500 meter radius, but essentially, or maybe, I can't remember exactly, but regardless, you can find it in the documentation. But yeah, so you see the population, and you can see the average household size there. And yeah, you can see all of these other different analysis variables, like I was mentioning, number of dogs, number of cats, how many people bought popsicles in the last 6 months. Like it gets crazy how many variables there are. So it's pretty cool. I would say definitely check it out. It's kind of fun. All right. Nice. Yep, and this is just the structure. This is what we just saw, basically. And then this is, I didn't show this one, but this would be like number of pets and number of people married. So you could just throw in those variables there and you get to see that. So I'm not going to go ahead and actually show these, but if you go to you can actually inspect these pages and you'll see what libraries they're using. So if you inspect them in the browser's developer tools, you'll be able to see that Craigslist, they have a map and they use Leaflet. Outdoor Active uses MapLibre. And New York City Subway uses OpenLayers. And there are many other real world examples out there. All right, so let's go ahead and summarize each of these. So to summarize, each of these libraries does have its unique strengths. They're tailored to different types of mapping projects. So Leaflet, lightweight, many plugins, easy to use, but it's not great for large data sets. And simple visualizations are really all it can handle for the most part. MapLibre GL JS. We've got some pros are it can definitely handle large data sets. We didn't get to see that, but it wasn't loading very well. But it can also handle vector-based maps because of that WebGL rendering. Cons, it is a bit resource intensive though. And then OpenLayers. We've got some pros are advanced projection. So if you did want to do something other than the common web Mercator, you certainly could do that with this library. You can have multiple layers and layer types, but it is a bit more of a steeper learning curve. So I would say don't start with that one for sure. Okay, cool. And that is my presentation. Again, I have put up the QR code if you want to access it if you didn't already. It's got the slides and all of the demos on there. So thank you very much.